We are ready.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the John Day Urban Renewal Meeting to order of Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand with the hats, please. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, and justice. We all councilors are present. Are there any amendments to the agenda items? We have to have this one accepted. Okay. Somebody make a motion to accept.
I move to accept the agenda for the John Day Urban Renewal Meeting.
Okay. Do I have a second? I'll second it. Eric makes the motion.
Me.
Ed seconds. Any discussion? Okay. I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. President Brinker, I would make a motion to approve or appoint Dave Holland as chair.
For what?
This meeting.
For the urban renewal?
Yep, I'm looking at last year's urban renewal committee meeting, and it says chair, vice chair, officer, and secretary.
We just approved the agenda.
Yep.
Kind of at a loss in that because I thought that would be you, Melissa.
Well, I'm not the chair. I mean, I've been council president's the chair for now. If you want to elect a chair and vice chair for the urban renewal, you already approved the agenda. That should have been under additions to the agenda.
Yeah, point of order. There's nothing on the agenda regarding appointing chair.
We will be doing that for the budget, but not for the URA.
Just going by past practices. So.
Public comments. If there are any public comments, please limit it to 3 minutes. Public comments are an opportunity to present information or speak on an issue that is not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. Visitors may state their comments and should not expect the council to engage in back and forth dialogue regarding the comment. Council may either choose to add it to or follow up a meeting or direct the city manager to follow up with the speaker. Are there any public comments at this moment? Seeing none, we will move on to number 6, URA fund update and discussion.
That's good. Okay, well, we all have to talk from today. Okay, so it's okay. It's out of order. I'll just stand right here. Has everybody read this? So this was there's been a few updates to this, and I'll go over those as we go through. The big question that we're asking, and why we're even doing this, is staff wants guidance on what we're doing here with regard to the debt that's outstanding. So we've already taken $925,000 in debt. We can take another $925,000 in debt. We talked about that. Again, we want some guidance here on that. Also, the incentive program. Do we want to continue that? Do we want to continue the freeze? Do we want to change it? How we need a path here. So we're looking for direction on those two items. So we have right now, when this loan was contemplated, council approved the whole loan. The city manager actually has full authority without any further action from council to accept that loan, should that you guys want us to do that. So there's really no barriers besides just saying, hey, we're all new to this and we want some guidance from you guys, right? You're elected officials. So So there's that. So again, those are the items I'm going to want you to consider here. We have a little bit of a pinch, and that's what brings this discussion to the fore is, you know, if we had more cash available, I don't think we would be having this discussion, but we're at a point where the cities from the last council meeting, the city's funds are a little lower than we'd like to see. Nothing urgent, but just, hey, we just need to take care of making sure the cash flow is there to do what we need to do. And then also there's a kind of in the urban renewal agency bylaws, it talks about making sure that we have enough funds to actually carry out the mission. Currently, we don't in that fund, and we'll talk more as we go through here. So there's a ton of data here, and that's why I asked if you guys have read this. So I'm hoping you have, because I don't want to read this word for word, but I'm going to try and just kind of go paragraph by paragraph to keep myself on topic here to make sure that I cover everything. So as I've already shared with you that the council approved this, that the purchase of $1.8 million, rather the incentive payments of $1.8 million to build those developments was authorized. It was done. Part of why it's hard to ferret out where the cash is from URA is because it was decided at one point perfectly appropriate to merge the cash accounts for the URA and the city. So we operate everything out of one cash account. And that's due to the accounting treatment of the URA being a blended component unit. And what that means is you guys are also city council. And so that's all it means is the governing body over both separate legal entities is the same entity. So that's what's going on there. But it is important to note that both are separate legal entities, and therefore any action between the two, such as a loan, needs to have an agreement in place. Okay, so the audit report for 22 showed a deficit ending fund balance of $598,000. So negative $598,000. If we look at the 24 budget, somehow that beginning working capital, which is beginning fund balance, was stated as at a positive $590,000. So back to Eric's question, I found this out literally the next day after the meeting last time.
2 meetings ago.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I go to one meeting. The last one I was found this out that he had asked, well, there's $1 million hole. We came in the budget process, there was $1 million hole. And where did that go? Well, there's your answer. So somehow the sign got flipped. Don't care, that's not important. The point is, the budget contemplated expenditures of about $1.5 million in the URA, and a balanced budget would have shown expenditures of about $267 had we taken out the full $1.8 million loan instead of just half of it. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So current year to date, we spent about $400,000 in the URA. So we have a very significant deficit fund balance. As we go into the budget process, we're going to show a beginning fund balance of roughly $800,000 or $900,000 in the negative. And so that loan needs to go just to bring, we need that loan for business or the other half just to bring the URA back to a zero starting fund balance. That makes sense. So I think I've now kind of told you how I feel about that loan. I feel like, because I would add directly $925,000 to the city's coffers. And so we won't be having this conversation today, like we did in the last meeting. Hey, you have no money, right? You're going to have money to do what you need to do. Those expenditures that the loan is for have already been incurred. That's why we have an $800,000 deficit fund balance. So there's no additional costs required. We're just repaying ourselves with debt, not grants, for what we've done already. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah,
Hold off on public comment until it's done.
There was no public comment.
Public comment on the agenda.
Yeah, but she asked me if there was public comment. There wasn't any. Okay, I'll move on. I'll hold it off.
Okay, try and remember your question.
Okay. And then so now on the second page, that was the first page, just kind of trying to skim through this and glean the important parts. So then there's just a quick history here of what we've already done, which is we're taking out the $925,000. That loan, whether we take out additional or not, doesn't matter. Or even we don't even have to take out $925. That's that's also part of the discussion too. We can take out a portion of the 925 if we want. Those will go into repayment on December 1st, 2025, which is not this coming budget year, but the following budget year. Okay. So in that budget that we'll present later, there will be nothing in there related to repayment of this debt. The loan that we've already taken out has a repayment of roughly $64,000. Your current year URA tax revenue is about $93,000. Dude, sorry. Your property tax revenue is roughly $93,000, and that has been going up. It's also there was a projection done when the URA started. We are ahead of that projection. I'm going to call that out and say what it is, right? So we should have been about 64,000 at this juncture. We're at 93,000, so we are well ahead of that. Okay, so if we take out the other portion of the loan, you're going to be closer to 125,000 in debt service, which exceeds the 93 we have today. But remember, that has been growing, so it may continue at a rate. I'm not a prognosticator, and I have no point in trying to extrapolate what those numbers can look like. There is a report that was done when we already started, which shows the projection of how this should grow. So if we follow that, which we'll get to on the next page, we should actually have enough to cover that in a year or two. Okay. So I think that covers everything. There's just a lot of data here that I want to make sure you have it all available so you can make a good decision on all this. I think in here I say we don't have all the documentation. We do. We actually were able to obtain all of the documentation for all of this for the loan agreement with Business Oregon. And then there was also an IGA that was put in place between the URA and the city. So the way that this is structured is the debt actually is the city's debt. The city is the borrower, not the URA. So you guys can't actually authorize us to take out that loan in this setting. We have to go to the city setting to do that. The costs are held in the URA, and the URA has pledged all of its property tax revenues to pay for those debts to the city. So that's how that works. It's actually general obligation debt. We actually have to set up a new debt service fund for that when we come to that. So it's not the URA's debt, it's the city's debt. I think that's important that we know that, right? And there is an IGA in place that covers all of this. Okay, any questions?
How long have we known there was an IGA in place?
The contract reference that there was, we finally obtained it today. Reached out to Business Oregon and got it.
So, at this point, Rob, you're not calculating Ironwood subdivision at those lots.
Correct. There's zero development included.
Subdivided. They're currently finishing up the infrastructure.
Yep.
It's anticipated that those lots will be platted out sometime this year.
Yes.
Current year, which will put all those lots into the new tax bracket.
Correct.
Has anyone contacted the
assessor?
The assessor's office, yeah.
Yes.
To see what that anticipated.
Yeah, so they weren't willing to give us that anticipated amount. We did talk to them through that, and we are aware that this will happen. So that's my point. I was trying to give credit where credit's due here, is that we are ahead of where we expected to be at this juncture based on what was projected at the outset. That $1.8 million could result in incremental revenue that's not projected. That's absolutely true. And I'm not arguing that point at all. My concern right now is just this pinch point that's going to last somewhere between 2 or 3 and 5 years, right? Depending on how much revenue we get in the future, which we can't extrapolate at this juncture.
But it could last as long as only a year to a year and a half.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there were houses built between now and January 1st.
Even if Iron Triangle subdivided that property, potentially that would give us enough to service the loan debt. Maybe not a lot more.
Yeah.
But potentially that would be enough additional revenue to the URA to service the loan debt without any subsidy from the city.
Correct.
And then any houses that were built within the next year or so would only increase that.
In Nick's original presentation, where this got approved, it said, hey, if we can build 7 more houses than we projected, it would pay for itself. Again, I'm not trying to say we're in an emergency. I'm being very clear here, not in an emergency. This may actually pay for itself, may pan out really nice. But as of right this second, we have a huge deficit fund balance we need to address. That's all I'm trying to say.
Rob, looking at last year's budget,
Yes.
there was a $150,000 contingency fund to pay for the first payment. 150,000 fund to mitigate any shortage that should occur
In the URA, or what was
in
it?
the URA.
Yeah. See, that's the point I was making at the beginning, though, that there wasn't that money in the URA to begin with, even though it was
approved by the
budgeted.
budget committee.
Right.
It wasn't in there.
I know.
That negative
It would be nice to have a
500,000.
audit.
Yeah, we don't have an audit right now. Well, not in 23 numbers. We do not. Yeah. So yes, we don't have an audit for 23, and we still have one for current year, obviously, because it's not done yet. But yes, I see the operating contingency of 150,000. No questions there. But that loan doesn't go into repayment until next year.
24, 25. Yep.
25, 26, actually. So we don't even have to budget for it this next year.
December 25.
Yes, December 1st, 21 is when that payment's due. Yeah. So no, I want to be clear here. I'm just trying to make sure we're making good decisions with the data that's out there. I'm not trying to, I have no agenda.
Right, but then even if those lots went on the tax roll as of January 1st,
right?
25, then the URA would see that money in October,
Yeah, November,
whatever. So we're looking at potentially that would take care of that.
Yep.
We're also looking at, do we have some incentives hanging over us right now that we're supposed to be paid? And have
Yes, let me get to that in a second here.
Okay.
Well, STC.
Well,
We have one.
we have a whole slew of stuff to
Well,
talk about.
the obligated ones, yes.
Yes. Okay. So
Yes.
let me see here. So you're leading into my next point, I think here. So I think I've covered everything on that. There's some pretty simplistic scenarios here. I wasn't going to do a whole mess of trying to figure this out. This tax revenue subsidy is actually right off of the plan that was part of the original URA. Fast forward 2 years, because that's about where we're tracking. It's about 2 years ahead of plan. So if these numbers go up significantly higher, yeah, we'll definitely have more capital to work with. The thing is, we owe, like, when I say we, the URA owes the city for like $200,000 of STCs right now out of the URA funds, which there's not enough money in this to repay those, even if we take the 900,000 debt. And so we need to know what to do with those. The incentives on the developments that are already built, that went through legal. We're obligated to pay those. Absolutely. So any house that's built on those, because it was in the original development agreement, those have to be paid. So now we're talking about adding up all these obligations that we have and figuring out where we're going to have the capital for that. So yes, we might have enough to pay for the loan, even out of just direct tax and tax increment financing revenue. But where are the other expenses going to come from? And that's part of why we're asking, like, should we keep this kind of open door policy on the URA, which, absent any change in the URA itself, it anticipates just going on indefinitely, and anyone that's in a qualifying area will get those incentives, right? But we have these SDCs for the developments we already built that have not been paid to the city, and those are more than the URA has cash to pay for. We have incentives that we're on the hook for the development of those properties, and then that pretty much wipes out any future cash flows for probably at least 5 years. That's what I'm asking, is what do we want to do? The city could choose to subsidize. The loan agreement could be put in place between the city and the URA to say, hey, you've got an open line of credit with us to subsidize these incentives and keep this ball rolling. Or you could say, no, we're out of money. I think we can do that, right, Melissa?
Yeah,
Say, no, we're out of money,
their
so-
programs, their incentive programs, so yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah. As for the ones that were applied, we actually wrote 3 checks just the other day for everybody that we had applications for. We wrote those checks about what, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? Yeah, so those have gone out for the ones we're aware of.
Because I knew there was 4, but I didn't know if any of them had been paid yet or not.
Yes, 3 checks went out. I'm not sure on the 4th what that is.
Fourth is the ridge, and we still have to wait to accept the.
Okay, gotcha. And we did go through those with the county assessor. We spoke with him and went for about an hour on the phone working this out. So
Well,
I feel like we got the
Yeah,
information.
the other thing we have to remember is, as far as the incentive program goes, if somebody applies, which I think we need to leave that application process open, because essentially it is working. And you say we're 2 years ahead of where it was projected
Absolutely.
when it was developed.
Yes,
So essentially it is working, it is creating what the city had hoped it would create, or the URA,
right.
But lost it. I was on a roll.
Well, there's a ton of information, so I get it.
Oh, I know what it was. It was, if somebody applies, then, excuse me, by the time they get their house built,
Mhm.
there's a permit of occupancy issue.
Yes.
So they can live there.
Mhm.
It's not till then that we have to pay in cents. We
So
don't
that's
have-
not how it's actually been
Not
done
how
though.
it's been doing.
Like, we just copied and pasted how it's been done. What's happening is every year that there's an increase in the tax value, that portion of the incentive is being paid out.
Oh, so it's, yeah, because I knew that the tax people, if they started their house in October and it was a third built, then their property tax would
Yes.
go up based on that. And so you're saying that the incentives have been paid
Every year.
in partial.
Yes.
At
Which-
that same rate.
I don't know that if I had set it up, I'm not sure I would have done it that way. I would have probably been more along the lines of what you're describing is we just, yep, you're in the hopper. And when it's done, let us know and we'll do it then. But that's not how it's been done. So again, we carried on how it has been done.
Okay, how it has been done, but how is it actually set up? Is it set up to be done that way?
It's not clear.
Has that been reviewed in the rules and stuff?
Following the lead.
Well, I know, but I think
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah.
I think that's an important aspect, because if it's not required to be paid until the development is finalized, the house, whatever.
From my reading, I don't think it, see, when we read it, we didn't think it had to be paid that way.
Right.
And then we
Right.
looked at how it had been historically done and we followed in suit with that. But I don't think it has to be done that way.
Well, so I guess that's my point.
Yeah.
Is that you've got, potentially a year to a year and a half,
Right,
depending on the home builder
right.
and the quality of the home, the size of the home and everything else, before you would actually be required to make an incentive payment, if that's the way the rules read in the URA stuff. So it's just another point to be considered.
Absolutely. So
In the process.
you're definitely moving the obligation down a few years for sure. Because it takes only into account the tax increase as of January 1st. And so if you have one that spans multiple years, it could literally be more than even a year and a half out before you have to make any payment on that.
But you're still collecting additional taxes prior to that,
Correct.
prior to that incentive payment having to go out.
Yep.
So it could catch itself.
It could. Yeah, for sure.
I'm just, like I said, it's a discussion,
Yeah.
so I'm bringing up additional points.
I think they're good points and they're absolutely true. My discomfort is projecting any future revenues. I have no basis for coming up with
Nobody's got a crystal ball.
So, okay, as I understand it, we would be in debt $1.8 million, correct? That we'd be paying on,
Yes.
while we're also going to be paying out new incentives on top of that.
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah. You have to pay out the incentives already because you're obligated.
Okay,
There's no way out of that.
so you're not really looking at just that 92,000.
In SDCs.
You're also looking
have,
at.
you have past obligations of, we know of a road
Mhm.
that we were supposed to do this last year and didn't do.
Yeah.
We have SDCs, the back SDCs, and you have this new loan obligation potentially. And so, I guess it's a matter of how comfortable do you feel? And what is the ramifications?
So
Everybody.
that's what I'm worried about, is that, you know, we're already behind the 8 ball. We're gonna have to catch up, and then we're going to add to it.
I think I would characterize it not as behind the 8 ball, but rather our property taxes are essentially spoken for at this juncture. And that's really your only revenue source for the URA.
Right.
And until we get more tax revenues, we can't afford anything beyond that loan payment. And I'm assuming that we take the loan. I mean, that would make me feel better. But that's I mean, that's why, because it makes the cash account less tight, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it only makes sense. I mean, why would the city subsidize the URA $900 and some thousand when potentially they would only be subsidizing them less than $30,000?
correct. Yeah.
I mean,
At today's
it
taxes.
makes no sense financially.
Yeah.
At today's taxes, and they will probably go up next year some amount. And so
Right.
I can
So
associate
that
with less.
obligation or that subsidy from the city would grow less.
Correct.
In the years to come.
Yes.
I had this conversation with Melissa in the office that, you know, to me, it makes no sense that the city subsidizes URA $900 and some thousand when the money's available to pay the city back. And then if the city needs to subsidize a smaller amount or to help with the loan payment or even an incentive payment, that's a minute amount in comparison to the, you know, almost $1 million.
Yeah.
And so it seems ridiculous to operate under those conditions, you know, in my opinion. The other thing I discussed with her is that there is another option out there to help with the financial situation of the URA. I don't know if she pursued it any, but R3 has over $10 million given to from the state for communities under 50,000 population to help with housing.
Right.
And the URA is a perfect fit for that. And it wouldn't take as much money as some of the other projects are requiring, like big housing units and stuff. You know, we could potentially approach R3 and ask for $200,000 to $300,000 to help subsidize the URA until the tax increments have an opportunity to catch up.
So if we did pursue that option, would you ask for a grant or a loan? Or
I think we would ask for a grant. I think the money, I think they're probably willing to do both. That money wasn't meant to just be loaned out. It was meant to be used to help rural communities subsidize housing. And so that's what the URA is sole purpose is to subsidize and incentivize housing, whether it be duplexes, fourplexes, or individuals. They all qualify.
Yeah, the URA program dovetails nice with the R3 for sure.
So to me, that's a perfect fit for the URA. And I think before we make any major decisions, as far as the URA goes, I really think that option needs to be looked at. Because if, you know, and you guys can do the math. You guys can figure, okay, a couple $100,000, $300,000 out of a $10 million pot.
Right.
I was informed yesterday that they got another, quote me on it, but I think it was around another 1.6 million in grant funding for the same purpose, on top of the 10 million. And I was also told that there is money available. And so to me, before we blow the URA out of the ground and stop the progress that it has helped create, you know, that's an option we really need to take a serious look at. And I think we need to approach the R3 board and make the request.
Yes, and then that was contemplated in this.
And then if they don't, you know, if we're denied, you know, then we need to make a hard decision. But I don't think we necessarily need to make a major hard decision until we pursue that option, in my opinion.
I don't think making the decision tonight stops or precludes the board from deciding to move forward with R3. I think what we need is to have a budget in place that's balanced. And I think what we're saying is we have to make up that cash negative balance. And to do that, we're possibly going to have to take out the 900,000, regardless of if we got money from R3 or not. We have to balance the budget.
I agree.
Yeah. So that's the first decision that we're asking for. The second one is the pause is on now. We still have probably over 300,000 in obligations anyway out there. I mean, over 300,000. I can say that confidently. So regardless of R3, which we can, you know, that's still on the table. We have these decisions. We still need to know, and there is no harm in pausing it until you understand what we're going to do with this past these obligations, paying them or anything. I mean, it's not that we can't start. I mean, we have 20 years of this program, probably, what are we at, 17, 16 years now left of this URA program. I don't anticipate never coming back to an incentive program. What we're saying is, and you're calling it a pinch, the pinch point is now, and we need to figure out how to get out of that before we move on. And so regardless, we R3 on the table, whatever this body wants to do, we need these decisions made so we know how to balance the budget and be able to pay the bills, because we are obligated to build a road. We're obligated to pay these SDCs back. Those are restricted funds that we're obligated in another source to do things. And the incentive programs for the houses that you're anticipating to be built in these developments. So I don't think one depends on the other. I think they're, you know, separate from each other. And so to make these decisions tonight doesn't preclude us from approaching R3 if that's what the board decides, is what I'm saying.
What road are we obligated to build?
Holstrom's.
Well, it's been built other than that and been paved.
We're obligated to do that. And we were supposed to do it in 24, and we had to send them a letter saying we didn't have the money to do it. I anticipate we'll probably send another letter this next year. But at some point we have to fulfill that obligation. So
That's something we can subsidize with an SCA grant, isn't it? $250,000 SCA grant.
possibly.
Wouldn't that go a ways in helping to pay for it? I guess is a question.
Possibly, if we don't have other roads that the city wants to pave. I mean, you know, it's dependent on what the city decides to do. Yeah.
So just so I,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Just so I understand, so we've got two tiers of this program, and I'm just kind of going through that briefing because, you know, I'm not a URA expert. I just know what I've read when I've heard these meetings. So we've got two tiers. One is the three major developers that have gotten money from the program to develop 3 different subdivisions. Is that correct? And those developers have gotten how much money? 1.8 million. And to pay for that,
Not counting.
Not counting incentives. So that's just the developers. That's that tier. On the other tier, you have people who are building homes, new homes, and they get an incentive of some type. That's correct, right? An individual. So smaller, so it's smaller, a lot smaller little piece. How much have we spent? Roughly. Sorry, I didn't mean to pop quiz, but I mean, I'm trying to simplify this into a basic
it's
math.
averaging about 20,000 a home.
Well, so what we spent since 21, and this started before 21. Well, we spent since 21. Okay, never mind. It's gonna be hard to pull that number.
Okay, so there's some amount, less than 1.8 million, is it?
Yes.
Okay. That we've spent. And the way we paid for this so far has been, we've got basically, we call it a loan, I'll call it a line of credit because I think it's a little easier to understand. And for 1.8 million through business org. We've taken out sometime in the past, year ago, 2 years ago, something like that, we took out $900,000 on this line of credit. But we paid out 1.8 million just to that one tier. Okay. So, and we're counting on property tax revenue from those developments to help service this debt and keep the URA whole. The URA has other expenses because of the SDCs. And I might need a little explanation on this. I know the URA owes the city money for SDCs, and I know what SDCs are. So is it, explain to me exactly what the benefit is.
The URA, it's part of it's another incentive to help development.
So you waive the SDCs.
You waive, no,
No.
we don't waive them. The URA pays them on behalf of the city. So it comes out of the URA money to pay the SDCs. Those are restricted funds. You can only use them in certain ways, and that money has to go back into the city, into the SDCs.
So we don't charge them. We don't charge the developer or building for an SDC on that property.
The URA
property X, and with the promise that the URA will pay for it. And the URA doesn't go through the developer; it just goes to the city to compensate for not charging the developer.
The URA is supposed to pay the city back,
right? But they haven't done because there's been no money. Okay. So I'm just trying to cage this so I understand it in my little brain. Okay, so that's roughly $200 and something thousand.
Yeah, it's the big developments have a lot of loss.
So when it comes,
but those aren't owed yet. Well, some of them.
There you go.
So
Some of them are.
Yeah, I'm just trying to process what I understand how this works. So, and I understand the concept of the URA and how incentivized different places. I get that. So we've got another $900,000 on our credit card, and we'll max it out. And then it'll be done. And then it turns into a fixed loan at that point. About 120, instead of paying 64,000, now we're going to pay 128,000.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at the projections that were built by the Tiberius LLC guys back in 2018, 6 years ago, as to how much tax revenue we're going to get.
Yeah.
Right. And so you said something, Rob, and I need some clarification. You said we were 2 years ahead. Can you tell me what you were saying, what you meant by that?
Yeah, so 2024, according to their projections, I have it right in front of me right now, we should have been $58,000 in tax revenue. We're closer to $90,000 in tax revenue, and that puts us at 2026.
Okay, so we're where they
We're ahead
projected.
of the projection.
Okay, and is that tax revenue on? Is that broken out between the two tiers, the three developers, or it's just a tier?
No, that's how much we get from the property taxes in total tax increments.
Okay. And that's okay. So we're ahead. How many houses have been built on each tier of this program?
From the three developers or from the whole city?
Yeah, in 6 years. And it's on both tiers. So one tier is three developers, the other tiers.
One tier is recent. Okay, it's only like a year old.
No, the URA is 6 years old. That's what I was saying.
No, but you're confusing. The 1.8 million for the three developments is only like a year or so old.
Okay.
So they're brand new. They haven't really taken off yet.
Okay, so how many houses on the development? Yeah. One house which has not yet hit the tax rolls. It'll hit January 1st. Okay. And so when we were talking about, and Dave brought up a good point, thought about the certificate of occupancy. So in other URAs, the way I understand it, the way it works is you don't get the incentive until the house is built and the person's living in it and the taxes are coming in. But what we did was we paid the money up front, and is there any deadline or obligation to have a house built by a certain date and that tax revenue come in?
No.
Or could the developer, if the economy turns down, sit on the land, speculate and wait?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we don't get any tax revenue.
Yeah, the development agreements don't have a time frame.
So who put that agreement together? Or when, let me ask you, when?
Before my time.
Before.
Different city council.
That was, yeah.
Okay. And that's fair. I'm just trying to understand why we didn't do it the way most cities, you are urban renewal districts, which is what I'm familiar with, or urban renewal agencies, didn't do it that way. It's confusing to me why people got money up front with no obligation to perform. Just a promise.
The development agreements I've been involved in the past always had a performance deadline. But
yeah, no.
Well, they're not getting incentives if they don't build a house.
They're not. They got $1.8 million.
Well, that was for the development of the lots.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. I mean,
well, but it's
develop the lots and sit on it. I mean,
well, we
put
get
in the infrastructure.
We get tax revenue back off the lots. And so the tax revenue coming back off the lots helps pay the loan back.
But that's not how these usually run. What usually happens is you don't get that incentive until the house is built. Because I mean the development lot is interesting, but it adds up a marginal, and maybe if I'm mischaracterizing this, Rob, please correct me, but it doesn't add the level of value. The whole point, if you look at the URA document and read it, the whole point is to take land that doesn't have anything on it and put something on it. That's the idea. And so the way this program has been executed is it doesn't compel the people who are getting a big incentive to put a house on that, to put something on that property. It gives them money to, maybe lay a road or do the infrastructure. And I mean, that's all good. And that does add some value, but it doesn't serve the objective of the city, which everything I've read is growth, right? That was a strategy for John. Build more residential housing. That was the objective. And that's the objective based on the executive summary of this report in 2018. So it's interesting that there's lots out there, no houses, but how does that bring people into the community? How does that bring more students into the school? And which is in here, it talks about that. It talks about bringing families, it talks about bringing students into schools. And if you don't compel these developers to actually put a house up and run this like every other city runs one of these district agencies, then that's the challenge, I think. And so we're not getting, I feel like we're not reaching the, and I'm not saying this is all bad again, but the way it's been executed, we're not getting the full potential out of it. And I think there's a tremendous benefit going out. We're not getting the potential that industry standard wise you should be getting out of this.
So Eric, are you saying that we should go back to 2018 and change it? We can't. We're stuck. We can't do anything about it. You can talk about this is how it should be, but it's not the way it is.
Well, and maybe it should be changed. Maybe the whole thing should be redesigned and reset. Right. And that's I'm not going back and saying, what I'm saying is this has not been executed well, and now we're in a pinch point, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with this. And we've taken on a lot of debt, and we had $1 million mistake in our budget, in the URA budget, drafting the URA budget last year. And I'd like to know how that happened. How the heck did that happen? I sat in the budget committee meeting as a budget committee member, and I voted for the budget. And I asked about it. I was told Dave, you said there was no $1 million problem. You told me that 2 meetings ago.
You
Well,
were talking about city budget. That's not the city budget. It's your
I had no,
budget.
I just knew we were short the money. It's all commingled. He just explained that. The budget is the budget, right? I mean, yeah, they are two separate entities, and so we have two separate meetings. But it's what was the term you used? Well, the cash is yeah, it's commingled. So I mean, I knew there was $1 million problem, and that's why I asked the question. I wasn't sure where it was. I was trying to figure it out, but there was $1 million problem. So I want to know how this budget got developed last year. Who drafted this budget?
The city manager put it together, budget officer was Rick Allen.
Yeah.
Our budget officer was Anna.
Okay.
It wasn't our
And
budget.
so what's
Rick,
yeah, and Anna was the accountant. She sat during the budget committee.
Yeah.
Anybody else work on it? Did we pay anybody else?
I'm just looking at the
I'm asking the question.
historical record.
I know,
It's right here,
Okay, I'll look at the historical.
right here.
No, right here. This is an invoice. Let's see, FY 24 budget review, 12.5 hours for $2,812.50. Who's this invoice from, do you think? You don't know, do you? Catalyst.
So. We haven't got an audit. We have not got an audit.
Nobody said anything in the budget committee meeting about Catalyst having charged us almost $3,000 for the budget.
Not true.
It is true.
No,
You're first of all, you're interrupting, and I'll be glad to give you a chance. It's up to me, I'd give you a chance to talk. But I know what I heard in that budget meeting, and I know how cities typically run. I've got a lot of experience in cities, decades. And you have your city manager, who's typically your budget officer. And that's how we traditionally run. Very easy to understand. And usually you have a CPA, a certified public accountant, that assists the city manager in drafting the budget. And that's why that CPA comes to the meeting and answers technical questions about the budget for the budget committee. So everything is very transparent. I asked Anna questions in that meeting that were never reflected in the minutes. That's fine. But, and I specifically asked about how things were calculated, certain things were calculated, and she couldn't really answer the question. And I thought it was odd that she didn't have more of a command of the budget. Well, it's because she couldn't get the budget to balance. And so how did we get the budget to balance? Who authorized this?
The council.
The council authorized this ahead of time. The city council authorized Catalyst to spend up to $2,000, or for the city to spend up to $2,815.
I can answer that if you, but
Just a minute, I'll get to it. So the city you weren't even on the council.
no, but I was at every meeting.
Okay. So the council authorized Catalyst to review our budget. Is that?
They did not.
Okay. So, I was just a humble citizen budget committee member. But what chaps me is I feel like I was not told the whole truth. There were important details left out. And now, here we got $1 million mistake. We paid almost $3,000 for somebody to review a budget that our CPA could fix. And we get a balanced budget back. And there's $1 million mistake. And we're just now figuring it out. So who authorized this?
that's an invoice for the URA budget?
This is an invoice from Catalyst, 12.5 hours.
For what?
City services,
Specifically,
FY 24 budget review.
city
FY
budget.
FY 24 budget review, City of John Day on-call services.
Right. City budget.
No, that's not what it says.
Budget.
It
doesn't say URA budget. They're two separate.
doesn't say
budgets,
city
Eric.
budget either.
You're
okay?
accusing somebody
No,
of something.
I am asking
And-
questions.
I'm telling you that
Who wrote this? Or who authorized this? And what was it?
Catalyst, let me tell you,
Oh, okay,
quiet for a second.
were you there?
Catalyst, yes, I was.
Okay,
Catalyst was approached by Anna because Rick Allen was giving her no answers to work on the budget. And this is the city budget, not the URA budget, okay? So Nick agreed to help Anna figure out what was wrong with the budget.
okay,
The city budget,
okay.
not the URA budget. He did that for free. He did not invoice the city until Heather insisted that he invoiced the city for all the things he'd been doing for free to the city. And once she insisted, and you were in that meeting, once she insisted that, then Nick sent the invoice. He was doing it for free. He was helping Anna at Anna's request because Rick Allen was not helping her, was not giving her any answers, was not able to figure anything out. So she was desperate.
Okay, and I understand that. I understand that.
But that was
CPA,
not
she was
the
desperate.
URA budget, that was the city budget.
So you're telling me that but that's not what this says. This just says FY24 budget.
Eric,
It
I
doesn't say you are.
I was at that same meeting and Heather brought it up. Why aren't we paying people if they're doing work? Why aren't we paying them?
And we should.
And
we should.
that's why you got the.
But who authorized?
That's.
Who spent the money? Who obligated
Heather
the city? Before or after?
After the fact.
Okay, you can't authorize.
I think what he's
You
saying-
can't.
Excuse me, there was no charge prior to Heather insisting. He was not charging the city. That's what I'm telling you. So the person that authorized it was Heather when she was mayor, and she said, you need to invoice the city. I don't want free stuff. You worked for it. You need to be paid.
And that would be the right thing to do.
Okay, and I had no problem with that. So
So-
there was no authorization needed if money wasn't being spent.
So who directed Anna and staff to go to Nick Green to fix this?
Nobody directed her.
She just did it on her own.
She had no choice. Rick Allen was not able to help her with the budget.
So
He
she had no
didn't
choice.
understand it.
Okay.
It was a mess. I was in on all that process. Trust me, it was a mess.
So who
I
made,
helped them figure out part of the problems, not all of them, but part of them. But I didn't work on the URA budget. I only worked on the city's budget.
we'll never know for sure because nobody ever wrote any of this down. What happened?
It's in the meeting.
For what?
It happened.
This one?
Yeah, nobody wrote this down.
Either I was at the meeting or listening to it. And I actually heard, we are not going to allow people to give free stuff to the city of.
Well, and that's fine. That's after the fact though, Chris. It's after the fact. I'm talking about I'm talking about the decision-making process here. Okay? Nobody who is not on this council or designated by this council up to a certain limit can authorize the liabilities to the city without prior approval. So Anna can't do it. Anna can't do it. I don't care if she had no choice or not. She can't do it. It's not permissible. And so the fact that Heather is trying to clean things up because she's got people going rogue and going to former city managers who are not CPAs, are not qualified. They might know a lot of stuff. They might be very bright, but they're not qualified. And working on things for free with no documentation, and she wants to clean that up, doesn't necessarily make it her fault. And
Are we a little off the subject here?
we're not off the subject. We're not off the subject because we're talking about a almost $1.1 million mistake in the URA budget.
So why don't you call her in and ask her?
But you don't know who worked on that budget, Eric. You're making assumptions and you're making accusations just because it says the budget.
You all just sat here and told me nobody else worked on it. And now you're telling me, well, Nick did it, but he did it for free. And then we got this, and then, oh no, but Heather said we got to
The
charge it.
city's budget. There's two different budgets that are being talked about.
I know that, but they're always worked on together. So I'm done with this. But yeah, I am
All right.
furious that I was misled last year in the budget committee meeting.
I agree.
Let's cool things down a little bit because it's getting kind of heated in here. Nevertheless, we had a mistake. We have to correct it. We have to move on. We have to discuss this URA problem. It seems that we need to make a decision of whether we're going to allow the council to take out the rest of the loan. And if we want to hold things on the URA as far as giving out any more money or accepting any more applications until we find out if we can get subsidies for it, if we can get R3 money, if we can get ourselves ahead of the problem, because just taking out the rest of this money is not going to solve the problem of the URA. Okay, as far as I can tell. There's still going to be money to be spent. There's still going to be debt to be incurred. The city's still going to be on the hook. So I would just say, let's take one thing at a time. I know, Rob, I know you'd like to have an answer for both tonight.
Oh, no, that's totally fine.
But I think we just need to take this one step at a time, do what we have to do to make ourselves whole and be able to go forward with our budget. And then we can move forward with other options as we see fit.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate that. And I think, Dave, you did bring up some good points. And I'm not necessarily opposed to taking out in the future, just general discussion, taking out enough money just to make sure we're whole during this pinch point. But I think it's really important we get to the root cause. And so with that, I mean, I'd like to make a motion. I think is a fair one that would kind of maybe help rack this independently, kind of take the motion out of it. So I mean, I'd like to move that we direct Melissa to have city attorney hire an independent third party expert, independent, outside the city, outside the area, come in and do a soup to nuts evaluation of how the program has been administered. Make some recommendations for us on how to move it in a thoughtful way, and wherever the chips fall, they may. And I don't want to touch it. I don't want to be involved in it. And I think it should just take the politics out of it and just give us an objective. Hey, this is what it was set up to do. This is how it's run. This is how, here's some recommendations to move forward from somebody, an expert who's completely independent. That's my motion.
So we're going to incur more debt in a place where we can't afford to incur more debt.
We're only going to incur more if we keep doing what we're doing.
No, we're going to incur.
That's my motion. That's my motion.
I'll second it, take for discussion.
Okay, seconded.
Rob, would
Discussion.
an audit be an outside party
An audit is an outside party for financial statement purposes.
and would cover URAs?
You have to have a separate audit for your URA.
Right.
And so what an audit tells you is whether your information that creates the financial statements actually represents the story. For what Eric's talking about, I don't think you quite hit that on the nose. Because they're not going to go through, I as an auditor would not go through the organizational documents and say, well, this is how it's supposed to be administered, this is how it's administered. I wouldn't do that. I would say, did you spend the money? Yeah, okay, well, let's put it in this bucket. That's what I'm going to say.
Did I say audit? I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, and I wasn't talking necessarily about it. I meant more broadly, just a review and analysis of the whole program.
That sounds like a forensic.
Yeah, I'm not going to label it.
Forensic audit would go through the nitty-gritty details of every transaction and say, you know, did this comply with what it was intended to do?
And in your professional opinion, what would that cost? If we could find one.
That's the question. So I get asked frequently to do jobs like this, and I pretty much turn them down. Unfortunately, just incredibly busy. So finding one would be hard. I don't know what it would cost. It's going to determine. You're going to do an agreement with them. That'll determine scope. Determine how much. I mean, are you going to go from day one, or are you going to go for just the last couple of years?
Well, and I think that's a great question. I mean, I don't know enough to say, okay, we'll do this and do this just exactly like you say. I want to leave it up to somebody who would be more independent to look at, quite frankly. And I'm not necessarily saying it's got to be an accountant. I mean, maybe might be a component of that. And whoever does this might have an accountant help them with some of it. But you are a expert, a subject matter expert, somebody with experience who's done a lot of these and understands the law, understands process, understands best practices, and not just the money, right? And the money's spreadsheets and where, you know, what bucket fits in. And that's an important component of it, but that's not all of it. So when you say forensic audit, we're still talking about the buckets. We're just getting into the fidelity.
Forensic audit.
Yeah, you get into the nitty gritty. So I would rather let direct, I mean, my motion, the way I stated it, was intended to give Melissa the authority to work with the city attorney to identify somebody, an entity that is third party outside that has the background and the expertise to review the program and just give us some advice on how it's been administered and how we can move forward in a financially responsible way. Because we can sit here and debate all night long, but I really think this needs something that's going to be somebody from the outside, because what this URA is different. It's innovative. I'll use that word, right? It's different. And wasn't created like a typical URA or district. You know, urban rural district, where you got a section of town, right, that you want to dress up and make better, and that's the district, right? And that's the area. But we got property. We look at the map, and there's properties all over the city, right? And it's just basically every property that is worth more than whatever is or is not on it. And I mean, that's how I interpret it. So I just think an expert would be more suited. That's outside.
I think our the three developers would say, "Oh, I would never have done anything. Wasn't for this."
Well, that's a great point. I mean, yeah, I mean,
the county's different. Right now, we're trying to change a few things. Some people say, "No, I don't want to change." And these three developers are saying, "Yeah, let's take a chance.
Yeah,
but I need some help."
Right, absolutely, and quite frankly, I think it's really important. I mean, we heard from King. What was it? 2 meetings ago? Yeah, 2 meetings ago, he came in here so upset, and I want to get down to the bottom of that. I want to know how did this program fail to the point where he got upset? Because, saying, well, we suspended the program, well, that's just a symptom of a problem, right? I don't feel comfortable. I understand the problem. I want an expert to come in for the sake of this community to move it forward with this unique URA that we have, different, and say, okay, let's look at this. Let's see how it was done. It was new, innovative, this worked, that didn't. Let's move forward this way. And here's another recommendation, or you could go this way, and give us, the URA board, a recommendation.
A simple audit is going to cost you at least $2,000.
Oh, it's going to be
A
expensive.
forensic audit is probably going to. I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, we can have Melissa work on the scope and cost and bring it back. Well, but if we don't, I know it's another thing for her. But if we don't, we're just going to keep doing what we do. And I don't want to see that. I want to see something that when I'm gone, I'm not here. When you're gone, Chris or Dave or Sheridan, when we're all gone, and somebody steps into this, they have a clear picture of what's happening, what the intent was, and how to move it forward. And it doesn't rely on one human being to have all the knowledge. No single point to that.
Yes,
So I have several thoughts. It's been quite a while since I raised my hand, so.
sorry.
A minute or two. So number one, I have a question, and these are one for Bob Oswald.
I'm
Well,
gonna break it. You
actually,
got a motion on
yeah.
the floor
Yeah,
first.
we've got a motion on the first.
Okay, all right.
So it's gonna cost us more money.
Yes,
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, any more discussion?
This could potentially save us money, though.
I'll call for the question. That means that all discussions cut off. Let's vote. I need a second.
He just asked.
Okay.
So can we answer that?
Well, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. And more importantly, it's going to provide a level of transparency and honesty that's going to be important for rebuild trust in this community. So I think it's worth the investment.
Okay. All right, the question's been called. All those in
I need a
favor?
second on that.
You were the second.
You were the second.
This is,
No, you
this
called.
is the- guys, look at Robert rules. I'm calling for the question. That means that we're ending debate
Right,
And we
and
vote.
then we're going to vote on it.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's why it's called the question. Second, and then we vote.
You seconded,
You don't
you
second.
second the motion already
You
for
already
discussion.
seconded
Okay.
the motion.
I get tired of asking this question. That's okay. Read the Robert's rules of order, Eric.
Okay.
All those in favor of giving Melissa the authority to move forward and finding someone to look over the URA program to see how it could be handled, how it was handled, how it could be handled or improved. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Okay. I think it's a waste of money.
Well, there's a lot of things that have gone on lately that are a waste of money, David, and this
Okay,
is
let's go on.
important.
Let's move on.
Okay, so we need to make a decision as to whether we are going to give the authority to move forward on the rest of the loan.
Yeah, so actually, according to the agreement, Melissa already has that authority. We just said in the beginning, we just want guidance. What's
We
your,
have to balance the budget.
so
Yeah.
the budget includes that.
Yeah.
Okay,
If you say no, or you don't want us to move forward with that, then that's gonna change dramatically our conversation in a few minutes.
Yeah.
so can I get a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we give Melissa the authority to,
She already has.
well, however you think it should be worded. It is not my forte.
I think it's important to make a motion, and because it's a new council. So go back with your motion. I mean,
Yeah, then you go ahead and get that money that we need to balance the budget.
Do I have a second?
second.
All those in favor? Oh, hold on. No, I had discussion
Okay.
first. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Go ahead and ask your.
So finish what you got there on the floor. and
Finish
then-
the motion, yeah.
Okay,
So
All right.
discussion on the motion of me taking out
Taking out
rest
the
of the
money.
loan to balance the
does
budget.
anybody have anything to say about that?
Nope, I think we need to.
So. All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous.
With respect, one more point, you also have an option, currently right now, the URA incentive program is paused. Dave brought up discussion, about not pausing it, so that is something that you as a URA board can instruct me whether you want to keep the pause until this is cleared up, or until you feel like there's enough revenue coming in, or to Dave's point, you can keep it open to applications coming in. I don't know for sure the legality of if we accept an application, what that means, but I'd have to find out. But anyway, you can discuss that and also direct me on that also.
But like I said, I think that until we find out about R3 money, until we find out about these other avenues that we want to go, and if we can get the extra money, because right now there's not enough money to pay new incentives. Is that correct?
Correct.
You will bring the URA into a continued deficit at this juncture if we continue to pass. If we have revenue sources, then that would change the equation.
Correct. So, I mean, I think it should be, well, my personal opinion is that let's keep it paused until we find out whether we can afford to do this.
It would pausing it just at least just through the budget process, so we understand what the numbers come out to be as far as how much we're going to have to borrow and what the debt service. And then we can revisit it after the first year.
Well, here's my issue with this.
Okay.
Okay. And it's a technical issue. In our URA rules, if an application is not presented and not accepted, then they do not qualify for the incentive. So what you're doing is you've got a group of people that got in on the incentive. And potentially you're going to have a group of people beyond that get in on the incentive. And the people that chose to do it right now, not knowing the issues, are going to be unfairly treated by the URA. Okay, so I think we need to at least accept applications so that they will qualify in the future. Find out from our city attorney if we can suspend incentive payments for a period of time. Like, you know, they're still going to get it. It's just not the day they move in. It might be 6 months or a year down the road, but they would still be available. And I think that would, if we can do it that way, that's an if.
Yeah, and I'm gonna guess it's probably not, because we had to pay out the ones that were sitting there. So I assume because we had asked, so I'm gonna, and again, don't hold me to this, but I'm thinking back that we had to pay those. So if we have an application, we're required to act on it.
Right.
Is what I think was the issue, is why we made those payments.
If we put a public notice out.
Well, I did.
And well, I know you did. But those came in prior to that notice. Those were already done.
I think the point is, even if we put out the notice and we accept applications, we're negating our own notice. We're saying that we're going to accept them and act on them. I would think that's going to be the legal issue.
Well, either that or amend that part of it so that they can, that if they start construction prior to application, then they're not going to qualify. That's what it says in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we do that to people, that's going to be highly unfair. Oh, and that's what concerns me about it. I understand the financial end of it. I'm not oblivious to that at all. My concern is catching people right in the middle there, and all of a sudden they're treated differently and unfairly compared to these people and these people. That's my issue. I don't think it's right. So maybe we hold off on that decision until we get some other answers. Maybe we just table that particular decision until we get some answers from R3. And we see what's going on, because like I said, and then I think we need to dig a little further and see if it specifically says that we pay a percentage as the construction progresses, because if it doesn't, then you don't even have to pay those, regardless of past practice. You don't have to pay those incentives out until the certificate of occupancy.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
Makes sense.
to
And so-
Derek's point, I think if, now that we're gonna find this person, they'll also probably, I assume, give recommendations on that. They're looking into what's been done and how it's been done, so that's a good point. I mean, that all, to both your points, this might get worked out too.
And
How soon, I don't know.
that's fine. I'm just saying that I don't think we should be making a decision to cut it off tonight,
So status quo on the pause for now. Is that what I'm hearing or not?
Are there any new applications coming in?
No. Yeah, because the announcement basically said we will.
Okay,
Well, yeah, I mean, so the developments that we have a development agreement with, these 3 once those developments are accepted, formally accepted, meaning they've done all their improvements, they put in all their infrastructure, and they've done everything to city standards. Once we formally accept those developments, as they build houses, Mahogany Ridge, we will have to give those incentives out no matter what. So, I think the percentage of people outside of those 3 developments coming in would probably be very, very small anyway. I mean, you're talking about just lots around town or remodels.
And most of these developers that develop these subdivisions, I don't believe are in the business of building the houses themselves. I think at least part of them, 2 of them, I'm pretty sure, are more interested in making the lots available for sale. And then once the lot's sale, then it's up to the property owner. And Ironwood 1 probably went 10 to 15 years before it was mostly filled in. And there's still a few lots left on that one. So it's not something that's going to happen necessarily very quickly.
yeah,
So I think it's definitely a concern to look at, but I don't think it's a big red flag that all of a sudden within the next 2 years, we're going to have 50 different homes that we have to pay incentives. It's just not realistic.
Well, and conversely, some of those developments, the amount of the density of the units has changed over time also. So for instance, I mean, Holstrom's was only 4 lots. So your property tax incentive, if we hit this boom, it may not project as far out like what we've seen in the past, because I think Mahogany started out as 22, went to 12, and the last document I saw was 10. So what was projected may not come, you may not be getting all the housing that you thought anyway. So I think I think our pinch is going to last longer than a year or 2. I think we're looking at probably 3 to 4 years.
Yeah,
maybe
the projection
5.
is.
Yeah, 5 years. And so I don't know, just from a staffing standpoint, that we want to keep applications on file for 5 years sitting around. I don't know that that's good practice either. So,
I think if we get a hold of R3 and we make a proposal to them for some money to subsidize, and if it's accepted, then we can revisit this in the, sometime in the future, next month or 2. I think, that's something that needs to be checked into really fairly quickly.
so is
Just
this
continue
body,
to pause.
so you are instructing me to contact R3 and put a proposal together?
They apply.
Well, yeah, I think it's the smart thing to do.
It's available. It's a grant. Hello.
only if it's a grant.
Yeah, well, I agree. It's not going to do us any good if it's a loan.
Yeah.
What do you think we should apply for?
I mean,
The backfill for a while.
Go big.
so,
Big drop down. You need to.
yeah, I mean, I would, gosh, I think 300 is on the low side, to be honest. I think you would do better, you know, if you went for closer to $500,000, but I'm not sure that's gonna solve all your problems.
Well,
Everything depends on how quickly the tax increments grow. The projection's great, and I mean, if they hit that, fantastic. You know, I'll jump for joy with everybody. But I just, you know, that's not the accountant in me. I'm not gonna predict this stuff. So that's not where I'm at.
And like Melissa said, the numbers of homes that are going to be built, the numbers have changed over time. And so when these projections were written that we're basing our assumptions on, the numbers may be different in what reality is today, as far as what developers are planning on actually building. So I think we need to revisit that piece too. And I think that's where this analysis will help us understand really where we are. We can reset assumptions from the ones that were set in 2018.
Okay, so do we need some sort of motion, or are we all in consensus that
I just think
we just put that on hold for a while until we get all of these things figured out? But we will move forward with the loan.
and apply for $750,000.
I think it's gonna be kind of hard to get that much out of them.
Yeah,
Are you talking about R3?
You wanna try it?
well, let's not get the, I mean, I don't know if that's cart ahead of the horse nailing it.
Well,
Yeah, and I need consensus that you want me to do this.
I think she needs to put a figure down to apply.
Well,
I don't even know how to apply.
yeah, I don't have, I mean, it's in the best interest of the city and the finances of the city to examine what our we may or may not be able to do. And I think we need to start because, you know, we're kind of talking secondhand here, and it needs to be a stamp to stamp and then bring it back. Say, okay, this is what they believe they can do for us. Process. Here's the range, you know. We need more information before I think.
Yeah, I think we just need to contact the R3 board and discuss it with them and see if it's something that they're willing to do.
okay,
And then they can let her know if she needs to actually fill out an application and how to go about it or whatever. That's all I'm asking for.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm
yeah. Right. Tom, you had a question.
I have now multiple points now. So I'll try to remember them. First is my question for, I believe, Rob.
yeah.
So, Gavin, I think you might have answered it, but just for clarification. So if they don't take out that loan,
I mean, it's not like there's a penalty that comes into place, but we have a budgetary shortfall, and you would have to orchestrate a loan, which doesn't exist in the documents right now. You would have to do a loan from the city, an official loan, probably from the water fund to the URA to bring it back to balance, and then the URA would have to pay payments to the city to repay that loan over time.
okay, then our debt has already been tripled over the last 7 or 8 years.
I can't substantiate that.
Okay, that's two things. So another one is, it's very concerning to me to hear the terms bandied about, assuming, assumptions, maybe, if, because it reminds me of the pool bond that failed. The costs of the plans that were promised by the former city manager that would be paid for. He told John Rawl that in the city meeting. That was a flat out lie. These things concern me. If you look at the background and the academic literature on URAs, California created them. That should be a red flag to begin with. Okay. Oh yes, Shannon.
That's just a political statement.
Out of opinion.
Out of opinion.
They created it. And second, they canceled because they did not perform as promised. not at all. And we have been promised things with Purple Pipe, with the pool, with other things, and now with the URA. It's not performing. This needs to be put out of its misery sooner than later, because the city's on the hook and the taxes are going to go up through the roof. Until the sewer plant comes online, we've got the community development fund, we could have the police levy, the pool bond, all these other things. This is outrageous. Great for some people on PERS, not for the rest living hand to mouth. That's enough.
Thank you, John.
I've waited a long time also.
Oh, I
will
didn't
make
see your
it very-
hand raised, Shannon. I'm sorry.
I
Go
will
ahead.
make it very fast.
Okay.
Shannon Adair, John Day. I wanted to address, Eric, your comment about the developers being able to sit on the property. If I would have to go back and look, but if I remember that there was something in there that made it so they were not able to do that. And I don't remember off the top of my head what that was, but I do know that we had that discussion in council and talked about that. So coming up to that, when you said that you weren't accusing, when you say things like that, I hear it as being accusatory without the information yet. So that's just a personal, that's how I hear it when you're talking about things like that. It comes across as accusing without knowing the information before the accusation. So
I'm sorry, I want to be clear, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I was asking questions.
I know, but you're accusing people, you're saying, I'm just telling you that that's how it came across. I don't want to go any further on that. That's all I want to say on that. The other thing is I'm concerned on spending more money to get information on the URA before you ask the people that developed it. I think people are afraid to ask Nick Green for information because they feel like it's a political ask. I am saying you don't have to agree with anything he says, but you're spending money to find out information that he might be able to answer. And if you had him come and answer the questions, you might have less questions, or you might not, and you might still decide to go get it. Somebody look at it. But if you don't bring the people in that created it and ask them the question about why is it this way? Why isn't it working? And let them answer it for free, then you're missing an opportunity. I watched it happen with Grant County Digital. Tons of money and time was spent on attorney fees and on consultant fees and in over months of time. And with lots of Eric's time having to be spent on it. And in the end, Nick Green was asked to come to a meeting and answer questions. In the end, after all that money was spent. And maybe he's wrong. I'm not saying that he's gonna fix it.
This
I'm
is
just
URA.
saying,
Yeah.
I know, but you could ask the URA.
We've got a budget meeting to start in 1
Okay.
minute. I'm sorry.
That's all I have to say.
Okay.
About that.
All right.
I got one more question for you, Rob. On this loan with Business Oregon, is that just an outright loan or is that a line of credit?
It is an outright loan, and it is to the city. Read through the documents today in detail, so but it is an outright loan that goes into repayment, 19 payments, beginning December 1st, 2025.
I was under the impression for some reason, I don't remember where, that it was more of a line of credit that as it got paid back, the money was available to reuse.
No, it has line of credit period. So that's probably where that came from. It had a line of credit period from the date it was started until December 1st, 2025. You can draw any amount you want out and you don't have to take the full amount out.
So it's not a revolving line of credit.
No, but once it goes into repayment, it is just fixed. Yeah.
Thank you.
And just to add, I don't know, if Rob cares I say this or not, but I imagine that, and we talked about this and from my experience in URA has a lifespan of 20 years. I'm imagining that the reason John Day had to take out the loan is because the loan is a 20-year loan. And so there's no way the URA would have been able to do it because you can't obligate the URA past its time. And so the city would have had to take out the loan because the URA ends in 20 years and you can't obligate it past. So I'm assuming, I don't know, would have to ask a question, but I'm just guessing that makes sense to me. If I was in the same situation, that you would take the loan out through the city because the URA would not have been able to. That's just my guess.
Yes, one last point real quick. As far as the finances go, the debt service and the URA, you're talking about the SDCs and stuff, versus cash flow for the city. The SDCs owed to the city are less, not beneficial, but less critical to the city.
We had this conversation. Yeah.
Then the cash flow of the 900 and some thousand that the city is subsidized. So I guess in my mind or my opinion, the city could hold those SDC fees as a debt service over the URA until a point where the city actually needed that for system improvements. Because those are very, very restricted on where they can be spent.
It's true.
So financially, that doesn't hurt the city, where the other part of it financially does hurt the city. So when you're talking about, you know, at least $300,000 to $500,000 in order to get the URA out of debt, I don't think we need to be that critical with it necessarily, because the SDCs are a fair amount of that at this point. And at this point, the city doesn't have any projects that qualify those system development charges to be used on. So it's not a detriment to the city to hold that piece of the debt financially at this point.
So in the proposed budget, we don't have the URA paying any SDCs to the city at this juncture for that very reason. The 3 to 5 was specifically to run the operations until such time when the tax increment has gotten large enough to fund it itself. That was where that 3 to 5 came from. It's just a you know, kids. Yeah.
Grab it out of here.
Yeah.
I understand.
I gotta end this, and we gotta get to our next meeting. So.
Yeah. So if there's nothing else, can we have adjourn this meeting, please? Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Adjourn.